Okay. Welcome to the April 19, 2023 meeting of the Board of Trustees of Trust Funds. We will call the meeting to order, and I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the March 22nd meeting.
So moved.
I'll second.
Any corrections or deletions, additions? Hearing none, I'll call the question by roll call. Peter?
Yes.
Dana?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. All right, so the next item on the agenda just happens to be the donation policy. And we have our assistant, are you assistant or deputy?
Deputy.
Deputy, sorry, I didn't want
It's
to,
okay.
I didn't mean to demote you.
Wearing a lot of hats.
In Woodland for the recording. So, I don't know if you've had a chance to look at this any further. Just since our last meeting, I have spoken with Suzanne when she got back from her trip to the Great Plains, I guess?
To the Midwest.
To
Yes.
the Midwest. And I think I told you, I also had a chance to talk to Kate Cook even before our last meeting, and it was my impression from both those conversations, but I won't put words in Suzanne's mouth, that this policy really wasn't intended for the trustees of trust funds, and but I thought it was important to have her come and explain that. I've actually got proposed markups of the policy, which I think may achieve what we want, at least from my position, but I wanted to make sure everybody's on the same sheet of music. So why don't you tell us how we got to where we are now?
Sure. So in wearing my multiple hats, the deputy city manager and the deputy city attorney hat, I support the governance committee, which has been looking at a variety of policies and ordinance changes across a whole gamut or scope of issues, and have also been taking referrals from the city council to look at particular issues and kind of vet them with then the opportunity to bring them back to the city council. And early on in the course of this city council, there was interest in kind of looking at donations. Was there just in part, a process issue? Was there an easier way to deal with them than they were currently dealing with them on the agenda? Did they need to see them all? What was the process? And of course, we've had a lot of donation activity related to the skateboard park, which has generated some conversations in terms of our actually internal procedures and practices from a finance department perspective. So this issue was kind of out there in terms of, well, maybe we should look at a city council donation policy, really to get at the city council's current role in donations. So that really was the genesis, that maybe it would be useful to capture what was done or what is being done and maybe tweak it a little bit, because right now all donations, with the exception of certain categories like donations that go through the school board, donations that go through the library, they have their own policy, they have certain state laws that apply to the library, go to the city council, even if it's just a $5 or $10 donation. And so we started with that, and then looked at some donation policies adopted by other city councils across the U.S. just to see if we could learn anything from what other municipalities were doing in terms of policy. And so eventually, after a lot of input and back and forth at the governance committee, this draft policy was put forward. We shared it with the departments. I know some of the other boards and commissions have seen it. The goal really was not to intrude on what the school board, for example, is doing in their charter authority, or with regard to the library with their special authority under the charter and the ordinances, but really to to help just coordinate and give some framework for the city council's actions as it currently relates. So it was not intended to actually touch trusts at all. We recognize those are trust instruments typically that you're getting. They get approval through the city council, and then you have your historical trusts as a result of, you know, wills and other instruments that create trusts which the trustees administer. So it was not intended in any way to interfere with the practices and policies of the trustees.
Okay.
So, and if there are suggestions, I'm happy to bring them back to, you know, Kate Cook can decide whether she wants to bring them back to governance first for a look before they go back to the full city council, or whether she just wants to bring them to the city council directly. But happy to take those comments and, yeah.
All right. Any questions of Suzanne?
No, I think if to make it clear is in the policy, how do we get exempted?
And I have suggestions on that, but I want to make sure your questions are answered first. Anything else?
No?
Dana, any questions?
Yeah, I have a question, Suzanne, and applicable to the library and its authority to accept trust donations. Outside of, does a donation in trust have to go to the trustees, or can it go directly to the library trustees?
So, I thought I was touching base with Christine Fries from the library. I actually thought she was going to be here this morning. But from my perspective, I don't think that they are administering any funds. So
They are managing funds.
Okay.
And I guess that's the root of my question.
Okay. So I was, like I said, I didn't check in with Christine, but the state, there are a whole bunch of state statutes specific to libraries. And so the legal department over the last 20 years has looked at various and sundry of those state statutes depending on the specific issue. And can't recall off the top of my head whether we've specifically looked at what you're asking about, the administration of trust by the library trustees. We may have, because
Let me give you a little color and a little background.
Yeah.
And I'm speaking from personal experience on this. We went to, there's a bit of tension, or was at a point in time, between the library management and trustees and the city attorney and his role managing trust for the city. And there became a question when my family was making a donation to the library, whether it is made directly to the library or whether it's made to the city for the benefit of the library. And from what I know, that question remains a little unclear. If someone were to come forward and ask to make a donation to the library, how it would get handled.
So this is now coming back to me. Thank you. I do remember this. I was only tangentially involved, but this is coming back now. Yes, and this goes to the fact that the state statutes with regard to libraries don't intersect well with municipal corporations. So it would be fair to say that there is gray. So I do remember there being perhaps very strong views and differences of opinion on what would be the best method for handling certain donations and contributions to the libraries as they relate to trusts and something that's not an immediate gift, so to speak, an ongoing gift rather than a single one-time gift that frequently happens to the library. And if you look at the city's, I forget whether it's in the charter or the administrative code, chapter 1, because Christine Fries, the library director, and I spent some time actually looking at the library's policy and its consistency with the city charter and the city ordinances and its intersection with state law as we were putting this together. And we ultimately decided we just kind of let the library kind of run with its own policies because they were consistent enough with this one that we didn't feel that there was any conflict. And the library trustees do look at and approve a number of acceptance of gifts or set their own policies on how the library staff, for example, if someone says, oh, keep the change, how that gets handled and recorded as a donation or other items that come in. Because there is a set of state statutes that allow libraries to be fairly independent and operate as independent entities. Now, our library operates as a department, and that's where there's a bit of an opportunity for differences of view. I have to say the library director has been very collaborative in working with us, both on this policy and kind of sending everything that they're working on to the legal department for review before they adopt it in final form, so that we can try and find that amicable space. I mean, I'm happy to. It may be if we'd like to discuss that particular issue further, which is kind of almost separate from the donation policy itself. I think that's a conversation we could tee up. Maybe we'll pull our old knowledge from the files, or bring Mr. Sullivan and maybe the Christine Fries and maybe one of the trustees, and we could have a further conversation about that.
Right. My suggestion would be that there be clarity, and I'm not suggesting what that is, on what happens in the case of a significant contribution or donation for the benefit of the library to be held in trust, and make sure people know how to handle that. And secondly, the library has a somewhat significant, I guess it's all relative, amount of funds that they manage themselves.
They do, yep.
And I guess there's some question whether that's leveraging the expertise and the professional money management and the returns that they could potentially have if those funds were with the trustees.
Yeah, I think we should just have a specific conversation, make sure we get all the right people at the table and have that conversation. And do a little bit more than research into the state statutes. But we did kind of dance around some of this issue, and we're trying with the city council policy to get something that was fairly narrow, recognizing that the school board has its policies, the library trustees have its policies and practices, you have your policies, practices, and procedures, and state laws and all those requirements. And really what we were trying to do is create a city council policy to deal with what is going before them. Frankly, at every meeting, we have some kind of grants and donations and just clarity there. So I'd be curious to see if, when we go through your suggested changes, Tom, whether this issue that Dana has identified can be kind of set aside and dealt separately, because I think it comes more into Charter, Chapter 1, of the ordinance and state law and that intersection. So it may be what you've proposed here will allow this to move forward while we have that other conversation.
It almost seems, Suzanne, the initial thing was to be able to get away from every $25 donation having to go to the city council and be part of the meeting.
Correct.
It is now evolved in a much bigger thing that maybe solves the initial problem but creates others.
You know, it is a little bit broader than just, you know, process. On the other hand, when we look at sort of best practices, it would be good for the city council to make clear what it does and does not want to see and what it expects of the city manager in terms of being able to accept donations and bring forward. So I think we'd like to get a policy in place, and I'm happy to, you know, I'll take back whatever you'd like to Councilor Cook and see if she wants to bring it back to governance with any of the comments from this committee, or how she wants to take the next step, or whether it goes back to the city council. And maybe we can't divorce that other issue, but I'm happy to look at what your thoughts are, and then we can wrestle with that a little bit.
I really see them as separate. So at least the changes I'm going to suggest here are adopted. It doesn't impact that other dynamic at all. Just to add to what Dana said is probably maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I think even before you were a trustee, Peter, we were approached by one of the trustees of the library trustee funds who wanted to know if they could get the benefit of our financial management arrangement, excuse me, because we have a very good negotiated management fee. It may be the best in the state, I think. But we couldn't because it's not part of our funds, and they wanted to maintain their control over the funds. Now, we haven't had that conversation since then. It really doesn't matter to us. We're not looking to just take sums from other departments, but it's illustrative of how having all these little fiefdoms has some negative side effects as well.
Yep.
So unfortunately, Dana, I couldn't scan this. I made these these changes on my own copy yesterday. Do you have a copy of the policy in front of you?
I do.
Okay, so I only have 3 changes. The first 2 are on page 1 in section 2.1, the one that deals with scope. And I'm proposing at the end of that first sentence, which on the 3rd line refers to encouraged by staff directed to other organizations or community agencies, I'm proposing to add in after agencies unless excluded herein. And then on line 5, where it refers, the sentence that says that the policy is not intended to interfere or displace the policies and procedures of the school board and library trustees, I propose to add between those two the trustees of trust funds. So it'll say the policies and procedures of the school board, the trustees of trust funds, and the library trustees. And then the most important one is on page 2, section 2.2. I would add a subsection F, which simply says the trustees of trust funds. So I think those essentially just take us out of the entire thing.
And I have to say, I would expect that, based on the conversations that happened at the governance committee, that these changes are likely acceptable to the city council. Obviously, I'll bring that forward, and I'll talk with Councilor Cook, because it was not the intention to kind of override or usurp. It was, you know, a fairly narrow scope. And I think the check on this is, of course, trust instruments, when they're created, go to the city council to be created, so it kind of, it's going to have its own process, and look at the city, from the city council when new trusts are established. So I would not think any of these changes would be at all problematical, but I do hear that concern of your colleague from afar here, that there is this tension, and we are aware of the tension and somewhat the ambiguity in the law, because the law really, the state law was set up for smaller independent libraries not supported by towns that are and have their own established trusts. They have their own specific reporting requirements and fiduciary duties and all of that process, and it's very strong and very vibrant in New Hampshire, that set. But because we're a municipal corporation and they are a department of the library, there is this necessary kind of awkward intersection that we've been trying to manage, and it certainly has come up from time to time when there are larger donations as opposed to, someone wanting to donate a set of rare books for the library, and there's a process by which they vet, do we need these books? Do we have a place to keep them? And, do they belong here as part of the collection? So I think that's what we're trying to balance. But I'm happy to work to bring the parties together to have another conversation on that issue of that intersection.
I want to agree with Tom and appreciate Dana bringing this up, but I don't want to make it look like the trustees of the trust funds are interfering with the donation policy. I think me personally as a trustee, want to make sure that we're protected. If there is another fight, happy to listen to it, but I don't want to make us be a part of something that's been going on for years. The controversy's been going on for years.
So.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I mean, as I said, we had this, I wasn't aware of Dana's family's conversation when he was making the donations to the library.
It came flashing back.
But our...
I think Tom's simple enhancements to this policy will go a long way for clarification, aside from that the issue which remains on library trust contributions, and
So
settle that out amongst yourselves at staff.
okay.
Let me just share with you something, if you're taking it back.
Yeah.
I discussed this with Councilor Cook, but one of the things that caused me to have to look deeply into this in the first place is because most of what we have are governed by trust documents. Anytime someone creates a scholarship fund or it's the African Burying Ground Fund, all those things are, as you say, are done by individual trust documents that define when the monies come in, when the monies go out.
Yep.
But in 2019, we established our community scholarships, and those scholarships are specifically set up to allow for donations at any time. They can be done electronically in any amount without having to get pre-approval.
Right.
None of the things that are addressed in here, such as worrying about conflicts and stuff like that, ever come into play with us.
Yep.
And frankly, we're really not in a position to know who might be doing business with some department or something. So I think a lot of what was intended in here for the city generally, certainly departments who aren't in the business of managing money, these things make sense. It's just that, and I understand wanting to have some uniformity, but as you say, it's just the way we do business.
Yeah, understood, and it was very logical. The reasons why you do what you do with the scholarships, and certainly we want to encourage scholarship donations. So in that, this was intended not to discourage donations, but to just have a clearer outline of process and to have some sensitivity. If a large donation is coming through to the city council at a time that there may be some intersection with other events that are happening, that there's awareness and a conversation. And you'll see there's very little no, but simply calling things to the attention of the body.
Okay.
So,
And if they do want to have a meeting or something on it, I'm happy to come and explain what I just did now. And
yep. These seem very logical. I'll let Councillor Cook know that you're willing to speak to them, but like I said, these seem very logical to me, and I would expect it would
Great.
be to the rest of the city council. And
perfect. Thank you for coming.
I would, just to put it on the record, I would move that the change of the three changes offered by Chairman Watson be forwarded to the governance committee.
Yeah, I will say that I think that when I talked to Councilor Cook, it sounded like she wanted us to report back with our suggestions before the next city council meeting. So I think she may be planning on going directly.
these are small enough changes that she may just want to bring them right to the city council with these slight additions.
But I think our record should show that we approved the.
Okay, I'll take that as a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, call for a roll call.
Yes.
Dana?
Yes.
Chair votes yes.
Great. And so just so I'm clear, with regard to the issue that Dana raised, do you want me to set up a meeting with one of you and maybe the library director and maybe one of the trustees? We could kind of have just a small side meeting to see where everything's falling now, or do you not?
The word of a side meeting.
Sorry, I meant like a small
A work session.
a conversation as to whether to bring something back here.
Well, let me just, I don't want that to get in
Right.
any way confused with this.
Yeah.
So I would suggest that, are you still interested in fleshing this out, Dana?
I think long-term for the city, if there are capital improvement campaigns coming down the road, or I think the city needs to have some definitive course of action on this.
All right, so Dana.
So
as you can
it's
see,
a
is in
conversation with legal. That's what it is. It's a conversation with the legal department, and we'll just bring in the right parties to have a good one and see if we can identify the issues and if there's a path forward that needs to come to either the trustees and or the library trustees or some joint meeting if they're.
I would
some
nominate
clarification
Dana to be the trustees' representative.
Exactly.
in this conversation with the legal department.
Yes. And he's in Florida, so it's not going to take place for a couple of weeks anyways.
That's good because we're a little busy.
All right, okay.
But I can arrange that, and I'll reach out to the library director, and like I said, we'll have a conversation from that legal optic here.
Sounds good, appreciate you coming in.
Good, thank you.
Have a good day.
Suzanne.
Okay, let's talk about the Mortimer Trust.
Yeah, after our last meeting, this was going to be a long meeting today. I asked to put this on the agenda, but I have had conversation with the city attorney, and I always find it necessary not to go over the city attorney's head. There is a line of communication. Kathleen Dwyer, as we all know, was involved in the original writing of these trusts. I don't think at the time that Bill Mortimer or the trustees ever realized that there were going to be this amount of money upon his death. So in the discussion, there are ways, as Tom has brought up before, of making changes to what was approved in the initial trust. And what I sent to you is a motion that I would move to invite Kathleen Dwyer, and this has the blessing of the city attorney, at 7:30 at our next meeting. TD Bank never shows up till 8 o'clock, so that would give us a half hour. I have sent you in an email some changes that I think we need to have looked at, but I'd like you guys to look and see if there are any other changes. And then when we meet with Kathleen, she can start the ball rolling to ensure that we get the use of all of the income derived from the trust. And I'd make that motion that we invite Kathleen to the 7:30 meeting in May.
Okay. Do I hear a second?
Peter, help me understand exactly what your issue is here. Because I'm not sure what we're after. If you're looking for some amendment to the trust? So
Yeah, well, right now, Dana, $1,000 is the most you can give. Scholarship in the amount of $1,000. So if you look at the paragraphs that I pointed out, which would need to be changed, and in the second trust, I think it needs to be reworded because it gives the high school principal the authority to decide how much the scholarship would be. I think it needs to say, after the trustees have advised the principal of what's available. And so and the other thing, and I don't know if it needs to be changed, and I don't know exactly why Bill did it, but in the first trust, it says the first scholarship would be awarded after the graduate had attended college for 1 year. So it would not be available, and I don't know whether or not that's what his intent was, but I know Kathleen's had some conversations when she wrote the second one, and obviously that was not put in the second trust. So.
Okay, I get it. So at the end of the day, this is about changing the terms of the trust, and that's what we're inviting Kathleen in to talk about.
Yes.
Okay, I'll second that.
Okay. Just further discussion on that. I'll send this one to you, Dana. We don't need it for today, but I had gone through each of these trust documents and sort of highlighted or pulled out the sections relating to what it took to qualify to receive one of these scholarships and how much would be available. I'll email it to you when I get home. But the real problem more than the second one is the first trust, because as Peter has pointed out, it specifically says there can only be one scholarship of $1,000 given a year. And I had Judy run some numbers for us. Did you share these with?
I didn't, because it was late and I wasn't
Okay.
sure it was what you wanted.
All right, okay. Well, I'll have her send this to you.
Yep.
But she was doing some projections that, given certain assumptions on our rate of return, with a low of 2% and a high of like 5%, that potentially these trusts could be giving out somewhere between $20,000 and $50,000 a year in scholarships. And so, particularly with the Mortimer one, you would potentially have the situation where if it's only giving out $1,000 a year, it would just accumulate for,
Well,
it would be up in the millions in no time at all without any benefit of having it.
and for the next meeting, I'll run some numbers, Tom, because I think one of the good things is that his intent was to make these renewable.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so that, let's just not, that the $1,000 is the one that hits me. Even if it is renewable, I think we can make that more than $1,000 and still have, not go and evade any principal.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Both instruments have qualifiers that say that they can't we can't give out more money than essentially we get as a return. We can't invade the principal. It's just, no one, as you say, no one expected a $900,000 contribution.
Well, would you just, Judy, curiously have email which, now that we've made the deposit, which each trust balance is as of,
It's on that sheet, and I'll be happy to send it to you.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
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 So Mortimer 1 has 537,000, and Mortimer 2 has 531,000.
So, yeah, we got over $1 million.
Yep. We do.
What was Mortimer 2?
531,277. Mortimer 1, 537,420.
Thanks.
In talking about these, do I now have the trustees' permission to move these funds into the investment portfolio, or do you want me to wait until we further clarify?
Oh, no, I think they can go into the investment portfolio.
You're ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we formally accepted the money.
Okay.
I
Just
don't-
wanted to be sure.
We're not looking to move the money between the trusts. We're just looking to
Okay.
free it up for future
Okay.
scholarships. Great. And if you could send that
I will.
pro forma around to them as well, that'd be great.
I will get in touch with Kathleen and make the invitation to her for,
Yeah, it would be nice to have Susan here as well, if she can, because.
yes,
Okay.
she's aware of the situation, and her plate Susan plate right now is rather full.
Dana,
Yes.
we're going to have to switch to meeting 2, okay?
Oh, okay. All right, thanks. I'll go do that right now.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yep.
You having difficulty connecting with Dana, or?
I'm waiting for him to come up so that I can let him in, but I haven't seen him yet.
Was that, Peter, that other gentleman thinking there's a meeting in here at 8 or something?
Well, there have been several people that have come, and one was Jason Page, who looked like food.
No. Uh-oh. Come on, Dana.
I can get him on the phone, and we'll do it that way.
Yeah, might want to check them. Oh, there he is. He probably had to find it in his emails. Hey, your mute's on, Dana.
Dana, your mute's on.
You're muted. There you go.
Better?
Yes.
All right, sorry, thank you.
I was about ready to call you on the phone and do it the old-fashioned way. All right, next item is the Public Arts Trust request. This is the $21,100 that was requested of us last November, I
November,
think.
yes.
And we noted that there was a problem with the law.
Yeah.
And in your packet is the city manager's request with a copy of the February 6 minutes.
I move the request be granted.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Second?
And any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call a roll call. Peter?
Yes.
Dana?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes.
Judy, just to be consistent, the policy we set up was just to have certification from a city clerk. We don't need to get a copy of every page of the agenda of the meeting.
I didn't on that one. I just gave on that last packet, I gave one copy of the November
Yeah,
vote.
okay.
Because you had asked me that before.
Yeah, that's just
Yep,
make it
a lot of paper.
less paperwork.
Yep. Okay?
All right. Then so that pretty much cleans out that account, or?
The funds there's still some funds in there, but the funds are designated towards the Odyssey sculpture
Yep.
and middle school. So they're designated for specific projects, so,
And those are ongoing, so,
as far as I know. Yep.
okay. All right. TD Wealth Management reports.
So Suzanne had sent the dashboard, which I forwarded on to you. And then I have, I did the two sheets that I'm currently, for myself, that I follow, that I gave you copies of.
Yep. Happen to have one of the enlarged versions for
I
us, for the
do.
weak guys.
I do.
I was pleased to see that we recouped about $477,000 last month.
Yes. You have the version?
Oh, good, thank you.
Judy, does this reflect the Mortimer deposit?
I
No.
just asked for approval from the trustees to send that over. It does not, Dana.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that'll make a difference in the
Yes.
next one. It'll show
Yep.
Yeah. Be up $1 million.
additions.
Yes. Yes.
We'll clearly be up over 21 million.
Yeah.
So you just mentioned a $400,000 increase.
Yeah, well, I was looking at the reports they mailed in,
Well,
and this one, in, month to month.
Right.
well, but if we look at this,
Right.
it
Overall,
shows
we're still down.
503,000.
Yes. From last month.
Well, I just took their reports,
Yeah.
and I
Well,
took the differences. they
if
took-
we use our little
Yeah,
500,000.
It was a better month, for sure.
I think the question is, why is it a discrepancy? But
We'll have a chance next month to
Yep.
get everything in sync.
Any questions, observations, or?
And they are scheduled to come in next month.
And it's the 24th.
Yes.
Right.
I don't have my phone, but yes. Yes, it is the 24th. We had discussed that, and that's all been set up with the city clerk's office, yes.
Danny, you'll be back for that meeting?
Yeah.
On the long spreadsheet with the bar graphs on it,
Yes.
you're still tracking a February average? Is that, did you mean to say March to March, or is that still the February?
Oh, that's just, yeah, I didn't change that to much. It is much to much. If you look at the columns, it's much to much, and that automatically calculates, so it's 7.94%.
Okay, so we're
For much to much, yeah.
We're about 8% off of,
Where we were last
yeah.
March.
And in February, in March of last year, the market hadn't really started to dip yet, so
Yeah.
this is almost a,
Yes,
So that should say March to March?
yes, my apologies,
All right.
rushing through.
but the number is correct.
The number is correct. It's automatically,
So we're down 7 point, almost 8%.
Yeah, 8%.
since last March. Yes.
Yeah, in fact, that was almost just before the market started to slide, so. Okay, any questions or comments, Dana? Dana?
Yeah, I'm sorry, my Wi-Fi dropped for a moment.
Okay. I just was asking if you have any comments or questions before we,
No, the last I heard was you asked if it was March to March or February to February.
yes, and the answer is that the number, the 7.94% is correct, but it's March to March, not February to February.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
My apologies.
Just never trust you.
I know. That's what happens when you're doing it the day before.
All right, so all we have at this point is, other than public discussion, which appears not to be on the agenda for today, and signing checks is signing checks, so any new business?
Yes,
Oh, that's right, okay,
yes.
go ahead.
I had received a call from Kathleen Dwyer regarding the Carrie McHale Scholarship. Carrie's mother was under the impression, she was calling because she saw that the trustees had voted to give $7,000 versus she was expecting to see another $10,000. She had met with the Attorney General's office. There was a, what do you call it, a non-judicial
Yeah,
agreement, settlement a couple of years back that she would like to run the scholarship down and end it. And so she had gotten a non-judicial agreement from the Attorney General's office allowing her to do that. When we voted, we had chosen the $7,000 with the idea that there were still several students that had not come in for the prior year's scholarship. We did not want to run out of funds. However, Carrie's mom would like to award $10,000. Looking at it now, since some of those students have come in, I think we'll be fine to bump it up to the 10. And what she proposed, and what Kathleen discussed with her, is at the end of this year, once those awards have been paid out, she would like to take the remaining balance and move it over into the community scholarship for higher education. That way, that scholarship will be done. So that's what she would like to do. But the first piece of it is that is asking the trustees to please increase the amount to be given out from $7,000 to $10,000 and do that amendment for her.
Yeah. So we're within.
We are. We
10
have
grand,
the
yeah.
funds,
So
yes,
we're getting close to
being done with.
spending everything
Yes.
in this. So you may remember this. This was back in 2018 or 19 that she came in and we supported her interest in converting the perpetual name scholarship to a sunshine or sunset scholarship, and that's where we're at right now. So in light of the fact that it looks like, well, let me put the question this way. How many more of those previous awards have not actually been used at this point?
I think it's 2. That I looked, it's 2. Some, we have some students that never come in, and some that do. Believe it or not, there are some scholarships that never get paid out because they don't come in. However, we have 2 outstanding that could possibly come in. We still have plenty of balance in there to award $10,000 and cover the 2.
Yeah, no, I understand that. So
Yeah.
I think it makes total sense.
Okay.
Because that's what the
The
condition
agreement.
was, that there would be
Yes.
10 scholarships of 1,000 apiece. So
Yeah.
if we've got the funds to do that, we should do that.
Okay.
Would you like to somebody make a motion to that effect?
So move.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Weeks.
Yes.
And a second from Dana. Any further discussion on that part of it? Okay, I'll call the question, starting roll call. Peter?
Yes.
Dana?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes.
Thank you.
On the rest of it, I'm not so sure, given the language of this, that we can simply accept that monies into the scholarship.
Is that something that we would want to add to, with Kathleen being here, that it might be
That
something?
would be a very good idea.
Okay.
I'd hate to, I don't know how much money we're talking about at this point, but
Probably a couple of thousand.
yeah, I don't want to go through another non-judicial settlement agreement. I'd rather just give that money out in the next year.
Okay.
I mean, I'd like the legal's interpretation of this, just to make sure.
Okay.
I mean, I'd like the money into community if we can. I'm just not sure we're empowered to do that, so.
So we'll add that to the agenda for Kathleen when she's here next month, if that's all right with everyone.
Yep.
Okay.
And give her a heads up to take
Yes.
a look at it.
Yes.
Okay.
I just would like to note one other thing. Are we finished with the McHale Scholarship then?
Yeah,
everything?
I
Okay.
think you have the vote to
Yes.
disperse 2 more.
I just wanted to let the trustees know that we did receive a donation into the community scholarship for tech of $150 last month. So, people are using it. It's, we might go a couple of months, but every now and then we get a couple of donations in. So I just wanted to recognize that.
Terrific.
Was that a single donation? or-
One single donation of $150.
So there's a good illustration of if we were doing that new city policy, we'd have to go to the city council to get an acceptance of that donation. So.
Yeah. So, and
All right.
And I
Anything
don't,
else?
I don't have any checks.
No
That
checks.
was,
No
that was
checks.
the only one, yep.
Excellent.
Was for the city
Any
manager.
other new business? Peter?
No other.
Dana?
No?
All right. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Okay, second.
All right. Roll call. Peter?
Yes.
Dana?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Thank you all.
Thank you.